The next person speaking will be Lauma Bērza, who is a skilled musician herself. And I would like to stress that it's really great that there are such people involved in studying traditional music that are in love with the subject. And look at these older folk musicians and seeing how rich is this world of traditional fiddling in Latvia. So next, as I mentioned, Lauma Bērza, she will talk about Jānis Ciguzis, who was already mentioned before, about his individual style. So I'll rush in front before the questions and ask her how her playing style has been influenced by studying Jānis Ciguzis. Thank you, Ilmārs. My name is Lauma, and I will be telling a story about Jānis Ciguzis and about his musicianship in the broadest sense of the term. So I hope I'll be able to reveal what I mean by musicianship. So the way I met Jānis Ciguzis was because of our both mutual appreciation of the violin, the fiddle. But when I took a closer look at his life story, I understood that fiddling is only one of his everyday dimensions. He is a whole entity, a whole being, and his fiddling is a natural and integral part of his life. And he hasn't called himself a fiddler or a violinist, but over the course of his life, it has always been present. So here you can see him at his house in northern Vidzeme, not far from Vīciems, not far from this place where he resides now. You'll find the house of his father as well. And this used to be an area where forest workers lived, but all of them at the same time played musicians, and so Ciguzis was born in this environment. So when I first heard him playing, I was surprised by the sound and body language being so unified. It's really hard to put into words, but you could definitely see his personality being present in playing music and what he presented to others while playing music. And this unity was I viewed it very positively, and it's a rare occurrence between musicians. And it's oftentimes only possible when you don't follow an exact musical school program. So in a way, there's a conflict between what he learned in music school and what he felt as a musician. So to have a better understanding how Jānis Ciguzis expresses himself, let's take a look at the video.
mirusi, tev jāmirst, lai kāda tava dzīvē. Tu necelties, nu tēvs to dzirdēja, bet es vairs vārdus nezinu. Un tad piezādē.
So here you can see the chapel of Smiltene, which Jānis was a member of. He's on the left with fiddle in his hand, violin in his hand. So this chapel ensemble played in balls and was an active part of the Smiltene region cultural life. They played in baptisms, weddings, balls, which were actually attended by my parents, the parents of my friends, our grandparents, our first teachers, and doctors. So in a way, I was already linked to Ciguzis before I even started my studies. So I'll tell a bit more about this picture from the chapel. It was taken in 1978 when the Folklore Repository was celebrating their 30th anniversary of expeditions, and they visited chapels all over Latvia. So this chapel was invited as well to take place in this event. We can see two fiddles. I'll talk about the differences in their playing. So in the middle you see Alfreds Mūžnieks with the harmonica. And as you can see, he's the main person here. On his right-hand side is his wife, Ilga Mūžniece, who was a hairdresser. That was her profession, but she played drums in the chapel. But it was more of a side job. So she traveled along with the musicians so they could keep on playing and wouldn't have gotten drunk before playing. And when making a catalog where she registered all of the times the chapel band performed, so she noted everything, where it took place, who ordered it, how much did they pay them, and what kind of dress she was wearing even. So the violinists are Jānis Ciguzis, who started playing in the chapel in his 30s, and Jānis Paste, who was, according to Ciguzis, the old violinist. And Ciguzis actually, we'll see later, has a term, an old Latvian, which encompasses a lot of things. And Ciguzis thought that he was an old Latvian and his violin playing was the same. So, and then on the other corner we see a round zither, which was custom made by a woodworker in Smiltene. So that's a short introduction on the Chapel of Smiltene, which Jānis was a member of. So, but now I'll tell you about the approach which I took. It's quite evident that he is not such a virtuosic player. He doesn't have such nuance in his playing, but that doesn't mean that his playing shouldn't be studied and that it is not worth taking any attention, paying any attention to it. So here's my approach. I'll cite the Irish ethnomusicologist Colin Quigley and his studies on violinist Émile Benoit from Newfoundland. I explore both social and cognitive dimensions of music, making through ethnographic methods, examining in detail the particular circumstances of his life in music, making experiences to answer the questions I have posed. So how his life experiences influence the values and beliefs that affected his music making. So in his studies, he achieves it with taking a really close look. So that's his approach of zooming in and looking at the individual terminology used by the musician. So what words the musician uses to describe music that makes his system of viewing music more understandable. So from quickly, I took on these principles that in storytelling, there's a high importance using the words of the person we're talking about. So with this in mind, I was really interested in the musician's motivation, physical and material being, status, how his musicality was formed, his aesthetics, the story he wants to tell, his expression, what was his musical material, how he learned new repertoires, how he viewed what was his own, what was alien to him, his religious and ethical norms and values. So in 2016, I first visited his house, the house of Jānis Ciguzis, and he actually has a lot of things growing in his garden, but he was still in his old age working on his house. And when I first visited him, I didn't even think of this becoming a full-blown study. So when taking an in-depth look into the musicianship of Jānis Ciguzis and by following the approach of Colin Quigley, I saw 4 sayings used by Ciguzis that came in the forefront of my study. So the first saying that he used very often is, the musics are always at hand. So instruments, or musics as he called them, were essential to actually being able to play music. So he always ensured that he had instruments besides him. But this was a priority for him for survival. And despite the fact that because of negligence or fraudulent nature of a lot of people, he lost some instruments, for example, someone sitting on it or going to a repair shop where he is given the wrong violin, a lesser violin that he had handed in previously. And so keeping his violins and instruments playable was quite an expensive hobby, but he still found it absolutely necessary to do. So the term musics, when referring to music instruments, is actually quite popular in the lexicon of musicians and kind of makes this visible border between playing music instruments and singing as 2 different entities. So playing music instruments was seen as a higher art than just singing. So these sayings show 4 aspects of his musicianship. So I already talked about the first one by accident, but so you can see all 4 of them. The second one, I'll just blow it out, is about his musicality. The next saying, all of these well-known songs, well, then he refers to all the songs that are known, the popular songs in Latvian culture. And another one is to flow together. So the main thing is to in a way jam with his musician friends. So that's a short introduction on the musics, as he called them. But now moving on, here are the musical instruments that he played. He really liked technology. He was actually driving a tractor. And he was very interested in the technological makeup of different things. He wanted to play the accordion. He wanted to take private lessons. He paid the teacher twice. The first time he was shown a few things, a few introductory things, and afterwards the second lesson didn't take place, but nevertheless he learned to play it. But the wife preferred him playing the violin, and his father and the brothers of his father were fiddlers as well. Of one of his first childhood memories, Jānis remembers playing with his father. So when my father's friends had birthday parties, I, as a boy, was brought with them as well, with a small hammered zither with 3 strings and not 5. So the father was playing violin and went to birthday parties and took Jānis with him, who had to play the zither. So my father trained me very well. My head was held straight up, and he was tilting it left and right. And I was slowly growing an interest in playing music. And then I learned foxtrots, waltzes, and different other kinds of music. And when I had to change the pedals, he just tilted his head, and that's how I learned. So Jānis remembers these memories quite fondly, because this was the formation of his musicianship. So playing with neighbors and friends made his concept of musicianship. Playing with his father, he considered this a time where it kind of started working out for him, the music thing. But how did Jānis learn to play the violin? I'll quote again. Well, the first simpler folk songs were quite easy, so I could learn some. But for more complex songs, I could learn the first part, but the second parts were sometimes harder, and I was mocked at times. And after learning 3 more complicated songs, playing became more instinctive. So that's how Jānis learned from his father and his father's brother. At the same time, he played the mandolin, which he called the banjo because of the similar sound. Here we can have a citation of him buying his first violin. So there was this old violin that I saw in the market. He asked, "Do you need a violin? Do you want it? But I won't give it away for free. I want 10 Russian rubles for that." All right, you have a deal. So I brought him the 10 rubles and got the violin, but it didn't have a bow. So I took some horsehair and made a sort of a bow, tied the horsehair together, washed them with soap, added some resin, and it worked out quite well. So we made a self-made bow and just played. So that's how I got my first violin. So the second quote was, "So I'll just blow it out." So it was kind of expressing oneself through playing music. So he learned music from his father, well, kind of in a countryside manner. So he feels quite relaxed and calm in his state of soul, like in a different room within his soul when he enters the state of mind of musicianship. So, and to feel relaxed, you have to have a drink. That's non-negotiable because you have to feel relaxed. So the way he views his playing is, he says it's instinctive, or the way I've learned it. And from an ethnical music perspective, it revolves around the concept of the skillful body, where he uses his kinetic memory to play the instrument. As for the individual style, Ciguzis is completely dependent on his coordination and motoric memory. And as for organizing his sound and what kind of sound he prefers, he uses different terms as bar, fist, and temperament. So these are terms used by Ciguzis himself, which kind of opens the window where we can see how he views music again. So you can't really see really fair sounds in his music, and he doesn't really want to achieve that. His playing is dominated by short, sharp sounds, and in order to enforce these aesthetics, he uses a bow. So when you hit the strings with the bow, it's a completely different sound. So you have to just drag it along with the strings to make the stronger sound. So, as Liana said previously, the violinist wants to make his presence felt, so he'll play higher notes. So he wants to make his presence known, but he'll play lower notes. So he got a alto, a viola, and put guitar strings, thicker strings on the violin. So the timbre was it made the whole ground shake. And that was actually one of the violins that was stolen from him. So others actually wanted to make their presence felt. So by making this rumbling on the thicker strings. As for his temperament, he uses a wide array of rhythm variations. He found different ways to vary rhythm. So the more you're familiar with the piece, the more variations you can bring to it. And he made different accents. He uses a lot of ornamentation, wide glissandos upwards, especially on the first and last sounds of phrases, or in times when you want to stress the importance of sounds in the melody. So vibratos sometimes appear in 8 notes. So, and they will never remain the same. There will always be ways how to make it more interesting with dynamics, how long the notes are, etc. And what's interesting is that these means are similar to vocal music. So he oftentimes plays in a way that he would sing something. So that's the way these phrases were composed. Let's talk about repertoire now. So all of those well-known good old songs, that's the way he referred to what he plays. So he usually tries to avoid talking about repertoire too much. Usually when ethnomusicologists visit musicians, the musicians talk a lot about what melodies they know how to play, even the lesser known ones. But Ciguzis always talks about the well-known tunes, as in a way, I'll just play what I know. So this is quite a thing that he views passively in his musicianship. He takes more interest in the textual information of music. He can't really choose he'll just choose what's his favorite music, and it's not that important. So how did repertoire form? So he learned from other musicians, from his father's brothers, members of the chapel in later time, and sometimes from radio shows as well. So, and this repertoire oftentimes shows what is mutual for different cultures, but sometimes the regional specifics are present here. But the main thing for Ciguzis is that the songs are well known, so they can be played together with other musicians. So music is an integral part of his life. So songs that come from the first part of his life are old Latvian songs, student songs, waltzes, folk songs, and so that's part of his identity, that is the man of the country. So a person playing traditional songs in traditional ways. Later on, when he was in his 30s, he started playing in the chapel. He played more traditional Latvian songs. He learned from chapel members and songs from Raimonds Pauls as well. But when saying Pauls songs, he doesn't refer to only songs composed by Raimonds Pauls, but other popular songs from the era, even from foreign composers as well. When he was 50, he saw a change in his personal life and an unstable political situation as well. So this is the time when the Restoration of Independence was forming. So that made him rethink his life. So this is a time when dumb songs came into his repertoire, according to his own words. So we could take a listen at one of the dumb songs.
Sapulcē, sieviņa mana. Ko tad tu tur darīji, vīriņu manu? Ko tad tu tur darīji, vīriņu manu? Referēju, sieviņa mana. Referēju, sieviņa mana. Par ko tad tu tur referēji, vīriņu manu? Par ko tad tu tur referēji, vīriņu manu? Par alkohola kaitīgumu, sieviņa mana. Par alkohola kaitīgumu, sieviņa mana. Kā tad tev tur gāja, vīriņu manu? Kā tad tev tur gāja, vīriņu manu? Izšvilpoja, sieviņa mana. Izšvilpoja, sieviņa mana. Par ko tad tev tur izšvilpoja, vīriņu manu? Par ko tad tev tur izšvilpoja, vīriņu manu? Pats bija pilā, sieviņa mana. Pats bija pilā, sieviņa mana. Der, tā bieži mums gadās, ja?
Nu jā, viņam šķīta vienmēr svarīgi, kā
he always thought that it's important
dodas pie cilvēkiem un
to be a musician of the people, to visit people,
kas notiek.
and to reflect about things happening around him.
50 gadu vecumu.
And so that change in his personality took place after he turned 50. So the most important part of his musicianship is playing in a band. He played in the solo very rarely, so he played with his father, his neighbors, his son, his colleagues in the ambulance where he played in Smiltene. So different doctors of the hospital of Smiltene played together. And tractor driver courses is where he met a lot of musicians. And his contemporaries, he called them retro comrades. And now he has a new relationship with scholars. So he has interest why these scholars come in and want to conduct studies about him. So Ciguzis is quite interested in jamming because it helps maintain good relationships. So this last aspect of jamming and coming together is a reason why he has always cared about instruments being available, because that's the main motivation of making music. So that makes a positive socially emotional bond possible, and he has never looked for people to make an ensemble together or just play together. Although playing in a chapel was a source of income aside from his work in the ambulance, but it was entirely accidental that his chance to play there came about. And he was actually kept in the chapel band because of his jokes and anecdotes that he told. So we'll listen recording from 78 from the chapel band. You can barely hear the violin because the recording is of poor quality.
cītaristu leli un anekdotēm.
So,
Citēju.
regarding
Un tad
zither,
jaunas meitenes bariem nāca
he has a
klausīties
quote,
cītaristu.
young
Un
girls
bija pie
came
suņa.
in
Anekdotes,
flocks
viss,
to
kas
listen to the
bija.
zither
Zināt,
player.
kā
He
piesaistīt.
knew how to
Citreiz
tell
nebija
jokes,
labi,
and
bet
he
tās
was really
meitenes
attractive.
klausījās.
People were
Un tas
attracted
jau
to him.
mācēja dziedāt tā atkal
Even though he
centās
wasn't
pie
the
mums
brightest,
kā solistu.
girls
Kādam
still
katram laukos tā balss
listened
un
to him
cīņoši
very
krita.
much.
Bet
And
cenšanās
he was
jāuzsver.
asked to be a solo
Ar to
singer
es
in
gribēju pateikt,
our
ka
parish.
vienmēr, kad mums sākas
So
tāda runa, kad es
I would
vairāk
like to add
uzzinu par repertuāru vai par
that
tādām
when
lietām, kas
trying to
man
inquire
vairāk varētu
about
interesēt,
repertoire
mēs
and things
nonākam
that I
līdz
would take more
anekdotēm,
interest
jo
in,
tas ir
we
tas,
always
kas
end
pēc
up by
mums
talking about
piepelnē.
anecdotes,
Un-
because that's the
un tas
main
arī
reason why
tas,
he was
ko,
a member of the chapel
kas
band.
viņam likās kā lielākā vērtība, ko
And,
viņi var dot cilvēkiem.
So that was seen as his main quality that he could give to
Tātad,
people.
Ciguža gadījums rāda,
So,
ko muzicēšana
in
var
conclusion,
nozīmēt
the
kā
case of
viena
Ciguzis
maza daļa
can
cilvēka
show us
dzīvē. Viņa pamatdarbs
what
nekad
music
nav bijis saistīts ar
can
mūziku, tomēr pastāv
do to a
noteikti
person's life. His
izvēļu un
occupation
apstākļu
was
kopums, kas
never
noteicis muzicēšanu
linked to
gandrīz
music,
visa mūža garumā.
but still he continued to play music throughout his life.
Kā
For
izpausties un
Ciguzis,
komunicēt
music is a
līdzīgi
way of
kā
expression
sarunas,
and communication,
anekdošu stāstu
just
pašiem.
as conversations, telling anecdotes, and
Pamatots bērnībā.
his
Turpmākajā dzīvē
conception of music
arvien
has been
apstiprināts un
embedded in
mainījies.
him from his
Tātad šī
childhood.
viņa mūzikas koncepta pamatā
So
pieredze, ka
his concept
muzicēšana
of
ir
music is the
pozitīva,
experience
ar to
of music
nodarboties
playing
kā
as something
simpātiski,
positive,
un tas ir
that it's a great way of
process,
spending your
kurā
time, and that it's a
stiprina
process
sociālās
where
saites, izpaužot
the
savu
individual
individualitāti.
strengthens his social
Pamatojoties uz šo pieredzi,
bonds
Ciguzis
and showing his
apzināti pie tās,
individuality.
pie muzicēšanas pieturas visa mūža garumā.
So he has
Būtiskākie
held
tie
on
principi, kas
to
atklājas,
music making his
pētot
whole
Ciguža
life.
muzicēšanu, ir pirmkārt
The
dažādās
musicianship
komunikācijas
of
kompetences,
Ciguzis
kuras viņš pilda
is
ar
composed of
muzicēšanu.
communication
Ar
competencies,
mūziku prot sveikt,
which
viņš
he
prot iepriecināt,
has
viņš
learned
prot
to use for
saspīdināt,
greeting,
viņš prot
for
viest
making people
sentimentu.
laugh, for making people
Nākamais
sentimental and other
princips ir
things.
tas, ka viņš spēlē
The next
instinktā,
principle is that he
gluži
plays
vaļā, spēlē kā
instinctively, he
iegājies.
just blows it out, he
Un,
just
trešais
plays the way he
princips,
knows
kurš
how to
ir vērojams
play.
Ciguža muzicēšanā,
And the
ir
third
tas, kā
principle is
savienojas tradīcija
how
un radošums.
tradition and
Viņš
creativity
iemācījies spēlēt no
are
savas
linked
ģimenes
in his
dejot,
musicianship.
vienkārši spēlēt pie draugiem,
So,
ballēs.
because of the way he learned
Tomēr šis viņa
music from his
temperaments
father
ir,
and his neighbors,
arī ļoti svarīgs un viens no iemesliem,
and at the same
kāpēc
time,
viņš
his temperament
spēlē
is a
violi
very
mūzici.
important
Beigās
part
mēs vēl noskatīsimies
of him
vienu
playing
video,
music. But in the
kur,
end,
Cigužis spēlēs
we
vienu
will take a
mazu
look at
pulpēdīti
a song,
uz
Pulpēdītis, played by
mandolīnas,
Ciguzis,
un pēc tam uz
first on
vīoles.
mandolin and second on
Manuprāt, šīs
the
abas
fiddle.
spēles būs savā
In my
ziņā
opinion,
līdzīgas, un
these
tā viņš arī
both
darīs,
tunes
lai
will be quite
panāktu
similar,
foksīšos,
and I think
lielāku
that
kontaktu, jo
was
mandolīna
intentional
ir
by
labāka
him,
taktī,
because
un
the mandolin
valstaros
is
spēlē
better for
violi,
keeping the
un
beat.
foksīšos mandolīnu.
And
Zini, kas būtu interesanti, ja uz vīoles arī uzspēlētu, ne? Šito,
Pupēdīt.
jā, pulpēdīt, ļoti smuks, ļoti smuks.
Kā tu izklausās?
Kā tu
Vai es to varu, vai nevaru?
Pārbaudīsim, pārbaudīsim. Man jau labāk patīk. Nu, paldies. Un tad,
Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them. Thank you, Lauma. I hope that, in the words of Ciguzis, we can maintain our emotional bond, and we'll meet next year in Smiltene for the violin festival. I have one short question from the internet. Is who is playing the drums in these recordings? So it's actually just the foot being stomped on the ground. So this humoristic nature of the violinist has helped to learn more of the violin tradition in the area. Well, of course, the way he sees playing, well, his repertoire contains a few tunes that he learned from his father, which are not widely known. But his view of life is what's not traditional. He knows how to make people laugh, how to make people sentimental, just by using his instrument. And that's why traditional music is so peculiar. Which that is just not just music. And another question we had from the live session is how popular it is to sing along with the violin. Well, as Liena already told us, violinists who held the violin on the chest were the ones singing, because then they could move their head freely, which allowed them to sing. Well, but this is not such a common practice. It's some people do it, but it's not very common. Thank you very much, Lauma, for the story.